I remember hearing an interview with an ex-evangelical Christian, and he talked about how the worst part of his faith, as he formerly had it, as he was raised in the church and up to a certain age in his life, I think up to middle age, the worst part was the feeling that if he did not preach to people, they were going to go to hell after they died. That when he sat down next to a stranger on an airplane, he felt pressure. He felt real pressure to share the gospel with them or to talk to them enough to figure out, are they already Christian or where are they at? Because from his perspective, that conversation could be the difference between an eternity and hell and whatever. This video is about veganism, in case you hadn't guessed. There's a video up from a channel called Vegan Artichoke. For most of you, this will be the first time you've heard of this channel. She gets fewer than 100 views on most of her videos. Just lately, she's got 2 videos that are of a more profound character that I'm here, appreciating. One is called Veganism is Emotionally Exhausting. That's what I'm responding to. She has another one titled, Are Problematic Vegans Helping or Hurting the Vegan Movement? So those are 2 videos I recommend from her channel. A lot of her other videos are just talking about her groceries or product reviews or what have you. It's of no interest to me, but hey, some of you guys will love it. So in her video, Veganism is Emotionally Exhausting, she talks about the mixed feelings she has about what she calls vegan activism in dealing with questions from people who are sometimes hostile, sometimes demeaning, sometimes insincere in challenging her veganism. And also, interestingly, she talks about her relations with other vegans and how exhausting that is for her and how she feels burnt out and what have you. So, it's worth listening to on the whole. It gives me an impetus to here provide a bunch of pragmatic advice that, some of you will find helpful and some of you will find offensive. There's an earlier video on this channel. I'm going to give you the link to my own earlier video that's called Dealing with Disrespectful Questions. As a vegan, when people are asking you questions, but those questions are really disrespectful or meant to challenge you. I got a lot of fan mail for that video. I think that video does contain helpful advice for all of you, including for this woman, Vegan Artichoke. However, that video starts by really telling you about who I am and why I handle these situations in the way that I do, and then gives you examples of how that works with dealing with people with veganism. It gives you a more general methodological approach to this. Here instead, let's kind of turn it around. So Vegan Artichoke, I think the most fundamental error she's making is of thinking of all conversations as activism. A conversation is not activism. It's not. And if you think of every conversation you have as activism, then you're stuck in the trap of that evangelical Christian who can't have a casual conversation with the person sitting next to him on the airplane without trying to save his soul. All right? That's the wrong approach. Activism is one thing. Conversations with human beings is another. You do not have to testify. You do not have to present your faith. You do not have to justify your worldview in these conversations with people. So that may seem like a stupid point to make, but that's a really deep assumption. And obviously, her interactions with people by social media are part of her frustration. So, I don't know, if you're taking every flippant remark on Facebook, every mere conversation as activism, if you're treating it that way, of course you're going to get burnt out. Second thing is, there's a difference between being sincere and treating the other person's question as sincere. The latter can really be a mistake. I said in the earlier video, these people are not asking for a 1-hour discourse on animal rights, not even if they say they are. She complains that there are people who challenge her and they demand scientific facts to back up everything she knows. So real talk, these are conversations I've actually had. I actually say to people, yeah, you're right. What about huffing glue? What about getting high from sniffing glue? How do you know that's bad for you? Can you prove it to me scientifically? Can you, in this conversation right now, walk me through the etiology of how it is that getting high from sniffing glue causes brain damage? I never looked into it that much. I believe, based on what I've read, that I know enough to make the decision not to huff glue. How about you? If you want to, you can go to a university library. You can get books off the shelf that will really break down for you in detail, step by step, the biochemistry and, the whole history of the research, how this was discovered, how the brain damage is going on. You can know that. It's not unknowable. But I'm telling you, I just have enough information that I don't sniff glue. Anyone in my life I care about, I'm going to try to get them to stop sniffing glue. I would never let my own kids sniff glue. Yeah, you know what? I'm completely convinced that sniffing glue is bad for you. But no, my dude, I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not going to break down for you now why and how sniffing glue destroys your brain. People who have these justifications for eating meat, the type, again, I'm just alluding to her video, type she alludes to, you can just say to them, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. What about cocaine? All the justifications you've given for why you can't give up eating meat. Well, the pleasure you get out of eating meat, do you really think that's more or less than cocaine? What are your reasons, really, for why you don't use cocaine? They can say whatever they say. You can say, you know what? I don't think that's the real reason. I think the reason why you do not want to do cocaine is because you don't want to be a cokehead. You don't want to be a crackhead. I think at bottom, at the root of all this, you want to be a good person, or you want to think of yourself as a good person. It doesn't mean you regard someone as a terrible person because they're using cocaine. So many famous artists, singers, rappers, DMX, whatever. So many famous people use cocaine. It's on the record. But yeah, on a really basic level, if I have a friend of mine, if I have a coworker at the office and he uses cocaine, I look at him differently. Yeah, I think you'd look at me differently. I think you'd be different. Sure. Someone is less trustworthy, less good, they're morally suspect. You would feel differently about yourself if you were a coke addict. So you don't do it because you want to be a good person. Now if you're talking to someone who cares about you a little bit, they're a longtime friend, family member, coworker, you can also turn it around and use basically reverse Socratic method. And again, you can say to them, yeah, you know what, you're right. All your points, whatever it is, about the desert island, scientific reasoning, evolution, whatever the point is. Yeah, you know what, you're right. So why do you think it matters so much to me? You know what? All the points you're raising are right. You know me. You know how much I care about this. Why do you think it matters to me? Why is that? Now, if they're not that close to you, if they say something insulting back, you can look them straight in the face and say, yeah, you know what? I must be a goddamn fool. Is that what it is? Is that why you think I do this? What's the point of those conversations? The point is not for you to exhaust yourself. The point is not for you to give a 1-hour lecture on animal rights. The point is not activism. Any of these people have access to the same sources of information you do. Now with the internet, more than ever, you don't even have to go to a library, right? If they wanted to know hard facts, they wouldn't be asking you these questions. And I would compare it to, back when I was studying First Nations, back when I was working on Cree and Ojibwe, these languages, so indigenous people of Canada, what Americans call American Indians. If somebody asked me, why are you studying First Nations? I would not say to them, well, this happened in 1734, and then this event happened in 1826, and Article 12 of the RCAP report says this. That level of factual analysis is irrelevant to the question, even if they're asking for it. It's not why we're having this conversation. And again, even if they're challenging you, if they say, oh, well, I read this study about, 5% difference in the rate of cancer or something. You say, yeah, you know what? You're right. You take it. You know what? Hey, I'm so happy for you that you read some bullshit article on the internet debunking veganism. Now you tell me, why does it matter so much to me? And I can tell you, I think it matters to you for the same reasons. I think you have chosen not to be a crackhead for fundamentally some of the same reasons why I don't eat dead pigs. We have something in common there. There's some basic moral sensibility there that our lives are not just about indulging in pleasure, and certain types of pleasures change the way we think about ourselves and the way we feel about ourselves. You know what? Scientific information is confusing. I don't really understand exactly why huffing glue causes brain damage. Breathing in solvents. I don't know why. I know all over the world people get addicted to it. People turn up in hospitals. They do brain scans. Damn, scary. If my own kid got addicted to it, if my own brother, if somebody I knew, if my coworker at the office, god damn, that's terrifying. Just sniffing glue. But hey man, I'm not a neuroscientist. That's not my role in life, is to know it in that kind of detail. That's not really what we're dealing with here, right? What is it that they want to know? What's the fundamental issue? It's a question of your motivations. It's a question of who you are. And that's why, again, I encourage you to say you can invite them in a kind of Socratic way. You can challenge them to answer that question. Why do you think it matters? Why do you think I do it? If all these things you say are true, what do you think the core of the issue is? And again, I mean, when I was studying First Nations, that's the real issue on the table. Doesn't matter what the person says to you. What they really want to know is what motivates me to do the work. And it was exhausting work of having a textbook open and memorizing the numbers 1 through 10 and the names of the months and the word for spoon and the word for fox and the word for wolf. Vocabulary is almost infinite in any language. There are so many hours that go into studying a language like that, apart from the history and the politics and all the other stuff. So what motivates you? What would motivate me to study that? Why do I care? Right? The answer is not going to be this kind of particular fact. But again, fundamentally, you have to be open-minded enough and open-hearted enough to separate and say, look, when I'm talking to you, I'm not trying to testify. I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not like that evangelical preacher. This is not activism. This is you and me. I'm just going to be real with you. And ultimately, your questions are not really about veganism. They're about me. They're about who am I, what do I believe, and why do I believe it? And I can answer that. That is what I'm an expert on. Not brain chemistry, not cancer, not, percentage of people who get heart attacks, not even farm conditions. I'm not the world's greatest expert on farm conditions. I've read some stuff. Not my field of expertise. As with the glue huffing, I feel I know enough to make the correct decision, right? But that's what we're talking about. Who am I? Who are you? What motivates me to do what I do? In a really simple sense, what you're talking about is, what is the meaning of life? What does it mean for you and me to live a good and meaningful life now? And when you speak to that, it doesn't matter how blunt or glib you are. When you speak to that, you will not get burnt out. You will not get emotionally exhausted. You will not get dragged into the types of conflicts that Vegan Artichoke complains have been making her life miserable. So, I mean, that's it. The secret to the whole riddle, ultimately, is understanding the question, the real intent of the questioner, and, as I like to say, keeping it real.